Chapter 1. The second year and ninth month after marrying Oliver Rodriguez, Juliette Cruz received a phone call. The real Miss Cruz has fully recovered. She will return to the country in half a month and take your place. During these 2 weeks, make absolutely sure you don't cause any trouble. The agreed $50 million will be transferred to your account in full. The call ended, and Juliette's hand trembled slightly. She could actually leave the Rodriguez family ahead of schedule. 3 years ago, the Cruz and Rodriguez families joined forces in a powerful alliance, and the marriage attracted enormous attention. At the critical moment, the Cruz family's eldest daughter suddenly fell ill with a strange disease. The Cruz family swiftly sealed off the news and approached Juliette, who had been volunteering at a small orphanage. This cooperation between our two families is crucial. If you didn't resemble my daughter by at least 80%, do you really think such an opportunity would ever fall to you? Mrs. Cruz let out a cold laugh. Her eyes filled with disdain as she looked down on her. A 3-year contract. When the time is up, take the money and get lost. Even if Juliette didn't want to step into this muddy water, she had no choice. On the eve of the wedding, she stayed up all night memorizing Oliver's likes and dislikes until she knew them by heart. After the marriage, she devoted herself wholeheartedly to pleasing Oliver and maintaining the relationship between the two families. Knowing that Oliver often got so busy he forgot to eat, Juliette personally selected the freshest ingredients and studied different cuisines in the kitchen every day, delivering meals to him herself. Knowing that Oliver frequently had social engagements, she would stand outside in the cold wind for hours in advance, just so she could be the first to bring him home. Everyone said she loved Oliver deeply. Oliver heard those words, but on the surface, he remained distant and cold, until the appearance of Laura, the so-called charity angel. Rumor had it that she promoted charity all over the world, ate only vegetarian food, and was like an angel from Western mythology, radiating a soft, gentle glow from head to toe. Oliver was deeply drawn to that glow. Almost overnight, it was as if Laura had captured his soul. There was no one else in his eyes but her. He diverted massive amounts of company funds into Laura's charity projects, and even ignored widespread opposition by repeatedly postponing shareholders' meetings, just so he could drive luxury cars with her through the streets to rescue stray cats. For the sake of helping Laura sleep peacefully, Oliver didn't return home even once for 3 whole months. Gradually, gossip spread within their social circle, saying that she looked far more like Oliver's wife than Juliette ever did. But Juliette didn't care at all. She only wanted to endure these last 2 weeks, take the money, and leave to pursue her own new life. No sooner had the call from the Cruz family ended than another call came through. Juliette paused, then still tapped to answer. Bring a late-night meal to the company. Cook it yourself. Oliver issued the order out of habit, his voice carrying a trace of indifference. Juliette gripped a thermometer showing 40 degrees Celsius, forcing herself to stay upright. But we're out of ingredients at home. How about I buy from your favorite place? If there aren't enough, then go buy them. Oliver cut her off coldly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Laura's stomach is delicate. She can't eat food from outside. The moment she heard Laura's name, Juliette understood everything. Whenever it concerned her, Oliver never hesitated, and there was never any room for discussion. All right. Juliette said nothing more and agreed immediately. After having the ingredients delivered, she spent another 2 hours carefully cooking before finally preparing food that satisfied Laura. The maid beside her couldn't help but speak up for Juliette. Sigh, what kind of husband makes his sick wife cook a late-night meal for another woman in the middle of the night? Madam, don't you feel wronged? Juliette paused while packing the food, then smiled and shook her head. Compared to the freedom and money that were about to come, none of this really mattered. The late autumn night wind was especially cold, coupled with her fever. Juliette deliberately put on an extra coat before heading out. Urged on by Oliver, she reached the company as quickly as possible, but she hadn't expected. The moment Juliette Cruz opened the door, panting, a basin of cold water was splashed straight at her. With a loud splash, the icy liquid poured down her front, seeping into her collar and making her whole body shudder from the cold. I'm so sorry, Miss Cruz. I didn't know you were standing right outside the door. Laura said she was sorry, but there wasn't a trace of apology in her eyes. Juliette had just wiped the cold water off her face when Oliver's icy voice came from inside. That's enough. What are you standing there for? Come in. She clenched her teeth and walked straight in. Oliver opened the food container, gently took out the dishes, and carefully fed them to Laura, bite by bite. The tenderness in his eyes was almost enough to melt into water. Laura smiled shyly. Her cheeks flushed as she looked at him. Juliet stood there like a puppet, expressionless, water still dripping from her clothes. She watched Laura finish the food bit by bit, while the damp fabric on her own body seemed to grow colder and colder. Just as she packed up the container and prepared to leave, Oliver suddenly spoke. "Wait, I'll have my assistant take you to change into some dry clothes." Juliet stopped in her tracks. "And while you're at it, go to the pharmacy and buy a few boxes of cold medicine for Laura. I'm worried she's wearing too little and might catch a chill." Hearing that, the corners of Juliet's lips curled into a fleeting, self-mocking smile. How could Oliver possibly care about her? It was nothing more than a momentary handout. Chapter 2. After Laura finished taking her cold medicine, Oliver Rodriguez brought her back to the Rodriguez residence, along with Juliet. Juliet got out of the car and walked toward the front gate with heavy, exhausted steps, thinking she could finally get a decent night's sleep. Oliver, however, merely moved his finger. A tall, burly bodyguard instantly stepped forward and blocked the entrance. "Laura ran away tonight after arguing with her family. If we don't take her in, she'll have nowhere to go." Juliet nodded slightly, indicating she had no objections, yet the bodyguard still stood firmly in place, showing no intention of moving aside. She lifted her head in mild confusion, only to meet Oliver's chilling gaze. "Tonight, you'll sleep in the courtyard." Juliet sobered up instantly, freezing where she stood. "Oliver, it's fine. Let Miss Cruz stay inside. She is your wife." After all, Laura clung to Oliver's arm, hurriedly offering a few words of insincere persuasion. "Wife? She's not worthy." Oliver let out a cold snort, contempt flickering in his eyes. "I've said it before, this was nothing more than a business marriage. The only one I truly care about is you." As he said this, his eyes remained fixed on Laura. He didn't spare Juliet even the slightest glance. Juliet subconsciously clenched her fists, her nails digging deep into her palms. The smile on her face could no longer be maintained, but remembering the warning from the Cruz family, she could only close her eyes and take a deep breath. Silently, she reminded herself that before leaving, she absolutely could not cause any trouble. "All right." Juliet lowered her eyes and nodded obediently. After the two of them went inside, she found a relatively clean spot in the courtyard and lay down. Drowsiness surged over her, and she eventually fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, heavy rain suddenly began to pour from the sky. Rainwater quickly soaked through her clothes, the chill seeping deep into her bones. Juliet was jolted awake at once. A loud crash of thunder echoed overhead. She shuddered in fright and instinctively looked up. She vaguely saw the reflection of a second-floor room. Oliver was carefully comforting Laura, who had been frightened by the thunder, forming a stark contrast with the miserable Juliet below. Early the next morning, with a loud bang, Oliver kicked the door open and found Juliet in the courtyard, shivering from the cold. "Was it you who sent those bedsheets over last night and caused Laura to have an allergic reaction?" She forced herself to sit up and shook her head. "I didn't have anyone send any bedsheets, and I don't know what she's allergic to." "Stop lying!" Oliver grabbed her wrist tightly, his face darkening completely. "You handle everything in this house. How could it not have been you who sent them? So all that indifference before was just an act? You were waiting for me to lower my guard so you could seize this chance to go after Laura, weren't you?" "It really wasn't me," Juliet tried desperately to explain, but Oliver waved his hand, ordering people to forcibly bring her to the dining table. "Someone, force these 10 glasses of milk down her throat." Not a single drop left. Juliet's face instantly turned deathly pale. She was severely allergic to milk. Just a single sip would cause her entire body to break out in rashes. Let alone this much. She struggled to stand up, but 2 servants pinned her firmly to the chair. Glass after glass of milk was poured into her mouth. A burning pain surged through her throat, so intense she could barely breathe. After all 10 glasses were finished, Juliet collapsed weakly on the table, the pain racking her body and leaving her unable to move. Oliver's icy voice suddenly rang out beside her ear. "I've already said it, right now. The only one I love is Laura. I hope you remember that and don't delude yourself into thinking I could ever have even the slightest feelings for you." Juliet struggled to open her swollen eyes. mustering all her strength to twitch her fingers, before sinking into unconsciousness. She knew it. She knew Oliver didn't love her, so she had never dared to hope for his affection. It was just that. Once, there had been a faint trace of wishful thinking in her heart. Now it seemed, it had been nothing more than a foolish hope after all. Chapter 3. After losing consciousness, Juliet had a very long dream. In the dream, someone gently wiped her forehead and carefully fed her cold medicine, soothing the nameless heat in her chest until it completely faded. It reminded her of her long-deceased grandmother. She couldn't help murmuring, "Grandma, don't worry, I'll be able to leave very soon." "Leave?" An abrupt male voice interrupted her. Juliet's eyes flew open. It was Oliver. Seeing her awake, he immediately tossed aside the towel in his hand, his gaze as cold as ever. "Leave where?" His sharp eyes locked onto her. She forced herself to stay calm and explained, "I dreamed about when I was often hospitalized as a child." "I meant leaving the hospital." Oliver looked at her suspiciously but didn't dwell on it. He tossed over a medical report. "The doctor says there's nothing serious wrong with you." Then he took out another item, an invitation. "Laura said she felt bad seeing you get soaked in the rain all night, so she's inviting you to attend the charity auction she's hosting." Juliet lowered her eyes, thinking of the Cruz family's warning. She nodded obediently. It was fine. There were only 7 days left before she could leave. After changing into her evening gown, Juliet went downstairs alone and saw Oliver seriously discussing details with his assistant. She walked a little closer and finally heard what they were talking about. It turned out that, to surprise Laura, he had gone to great lengths to plan a grand fireworks display. Sensing Juliet's approach, Oliver instructed the assistant to leave first, then shot her a cold glance. "Let's go." After the rain, North City seemed even colder. As the car sped along, Juliet instinctively wrapped her clothes tighter around herself. At the auction venue, Oliver took a seat directly in the very front row. Laura, dressed in a gorgeous pink gown, stood on the stage and gave him a shy smile. Their gazes lingered on each other for a long time, completely ignoring Juliet beside them. The auction soon began. Laura generously introduced each item up for bid, doing her utmost to instill the concept of charitable giving into everyone's hearts. Oliver stared intently at the delicate figure on stage, the corners of his lips lifting slightly, as though he were admiring a rare treasure. 2 hours later, Laura finished her closing remarks on stage. Suddenly, fireworks burst into the sky above the open-air auction, forming Laura's name, surrounded by several dynamically changing hearts. She looked up at the sky in surprise, then walked toward him step by step. "Oliver, thank you for preparing this surprise for me. I really love it." Oliver tightly held Laura's hand and gently wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. "As long as you like it, everything I've done is worth it." With that, the two embraced tightly, accepting the blessings of everyone present. Laura is so lucky to have such a handsome, wealthy husband who loves her so much, someone in the crowd shouted. Oliver shook his head and looked straight into Laura's eyes as he replied earnestly, "I'm the lucky one." The crowd immediately erupted into even louder cheers. Laura lowered her head shyly, but her gaze unexpectedly caught Juliet in the corner, her expression subtly changing. "Oliver, Miss Cruz is still here. You shouldn't say things like that. If she hears it, she might be unhappy." Hearing this, Oliver's dark eyes instantly turned cold. "Why should I care about her?" Laura curled her lips into a smile, secretly casting a triumphant glance at Juliet. Juliet paused briefly, then continued to sit quietly in her chair. He was right. There was no need to care about her, because from beginning to end, she never cared at all. Chapter 4. Dazzling fireworks danced across the deep night sky, brilliant like falling meteors. But disaster struck without warning. Suddenly, a firework fell directly onto the stage and exploded violently. Flames spread at terrifying speed. Nearby electronic equipment was instantly engulfed, and the entire venue erupted in a series of violent explosions. Guests screamed and fled in all directions. Oliver gritted his teeth and held Laura tightly in his arms, shielding her completely, not sparing Juliet even a glance. The three of them were soon surrounded by raging flames. Oliver soaked his jacket with bottled water, wrapped it tightly around Laura, and pushed forward toward the weakest part of the fire. Juliet looked around and hurriedly stepped forward, trying to follow. Suddenly, A metal frame collapsed behind her. Juliet quickened her pace, but a sharp, searing pain tore through her back, forcing a muffled groan from her throat. She slowly reached out, her voice weak as she called, "Oliver." But he didn't turn around. Instead, he scooped Laura up in his arms and rushed out of the sea of flames at full speed. The smoke grew thicker, the fire burned fiercer. Her last shred of hope was completely extinguished, pinned beneath the heavy debris. Juliet was unable to move and gradually lost consciousness in the choking smoke. When she woke again, the overwhelming smell of disinfectant assaulted her senses. Juliet instinctively opened her eyes. "You're awake." Following the voice, she saw Oliver standing at the doorway, his tone indifferent. "Laura likes the pastries from North Alley in South City. Go buy some and bring them back. She was badly frightened last night. I can't leave her side right now, I have to stay with her." With that, without waiting for Juliet's response, he hurried back into Laura's hospital room. Juliet forced herself out of bed. Her face was pale, and the wound on her back throbbed with dull pain. As she stepped outside, even the nurse nearby couldn't help stopping her. "Miss Cruz, your wound hasn't healed yet. Going out now could easily cause an infection." Juliet merely shook her head and insisted on leaving, supporting herself against the wall as she went alone. 3 hours later, Oliver took the pastries, his brows instantly knitting together. "Why are they all cold? Juliet, are you deliberately trying to mess with Laura again?" His face darkened completely as he grabbed her wrist. Juliet instinctively tried to defend herself. "I didn't. I came back as fast as I could. But I didn't expect." "That's enough." Oliver cut her off coldly, irritation thickening in his eyes. "Stop making excuses." He was about to say more when Laura's fragile voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Oliver, where are you?" Oliver abruptly released Juliet, shoving her hard backward as he rushed out. Caught off guard, Juliet slammed into the doorframe behind her. Her wound split open again, blood staining her snow-white blouse red. She bit down on her lower lip, silently enduring the searing pain. Only after a long while did she manage to stand, limping unsteadily toward the doctor's office. After calming Laura down, Oliver stepped out to get her medicine and overheard several caregivers talking nearby. South City is at least a 2-hour trip from here, and that place is always packed. You'd have to queue for at least an hour. Another caregiver shook their head, sighing. "If you ask me, what woman could do this much? Miss Cruz must love her husband to the extreme, so much that she'd rather drag herself there covered in injuries." Oliver froze, his brows slowly drawing together. An unfamiliar feeling quietly surfaced in his chest, something he couldn't quite grasp, and couldn't quite understand. Chapter 5. On the day Juliet was discharged from the hospital, Oliver showed up for once. He quickly helped load her things and sat with her in the back seat. The assistant in the front suddenly received an urgent call and instantly paled. "This is bad. President Rodriguez, Miss Laura was harassed while doing charity work in the mountain area." Oliver's gaze turned icy, his expression darkening instantly. "Go to the mountains." Just 3 words, yet they carried a chilling weight. The assistant didn't dare say another word. Flustered, he started the car, but fumbled several times in a row. Oliver finally lost his patience. "Get out. I'll drive myself." Oliver had always been calm and self-controlled. In more than 2 years of marriage, this was the first time Juliet had ever seen him this anxious. Sure enough, Laura was different to him. The roar of the engine tore through the silence. Scenery on both sides of the road flashed past the windows as Oliver stared straight ahead, the speed climbing higher and higher. No one knew how much time passed before a piercing screech of brakes rang out. Juliet clutched her seatbelt tightly and turned to look outside. Laura was surrounded by several shifty-eyed villagers, shrinking in the middle, trembling. What are you doing?" "I came here out of kindness to bring you food." The villagers exchanged glances, lewd smiles spreading across their faces. "We don't want food. You're more than enough." As they spoke, several filthy hands reached toward Laura at the same time. Bang! With a loud crash, the man in the lead was kicked hard to the ground, letting out a low groan. Oliver looked down at him coldly and slowly spat out a single word. "Get lost." The remaining villagers recoiled in fear, backing away several steps. Laura immediately threw herself into Oliver's arms, tears streaming down her face. "Oliver, you're finally here. I was so scared just now. I thought I wouldn't live to see you again. Oliver hurriedly patted her back, his movements gentle. It's okay. It's okay. I won't ever leave you alone again. With that, he took Laura by the hand and walked toward the car by the roadside. They moved quickly, completely forgetting about Juliet behind them. Juliet had just lifted her foot to follow when she was suddenly blocked. Stop right there. You're with them, aren't you? The leader had already climbed back to his feet, his face twisted with anger. Since she's gone, you'll take her place. Several of them lunged together, grabbing Juliet and pinning her firmly in place. Juliet's face turned deathly pale as she struggled with all her strength. She twisted her head and bit down hard on the nearest arm. The man cried out in pain and released her instantly. Juliet ran desperately toward the road, trying to catch up to their car. Oliver. Miss Cruz isn't in the car yet. Will she be okay? Laura glanced back several times, her expression hesitant. Oliver didn't turn around. He glanced once at the rearview mirror and started the car. Only his fingers gripping the steering wheel trembled slightly. Wait for me. Juliet tripped over a stone, scrambled back to her feet, and staggered toward them. Oliver seemed to steel himself. He parted his lips, his voice hoarse. We'll go first. She can handle it herself. With that, the car sped up instantly, shooting off into the distance. Juliet stood frozen, staring at the receding figure, her eyes filled with disbelief and tears. The men closed in again, seizing her arms once more. You still dare to run? The leader spat viciously and slapped her hard across the face. Smack! Juliet finally snapped back to reality. She struggled even harder, panic surging violently. In the chaos, someone shoved her hard, completely unprepared. She fell backward, hitting the back of her head against a solid rock. A sharp pain exploded at the back of her skull. Blood gradually soaked through her clothes. Her fingertips turned cold, and even breathing became difficult. Amid cries of alarm, the men fled in a panic, her vision blurred, and Juliet completely lost consciousness. When she woke again, she found herself in a hospital. Seeing her awake, Oliver Rodriguez's assistant bowed repeatedly to her. The doctor says you have a mild concussion and nothing serious. President Rodriguez needs to stay home with Miss Laura, so he won't be coming. Juliet nodded calmly. Compared to Laura, what did her safety even matter? Thankfully, there were only 5 days left before she could leave the Rodriguez family. She would never have to endure this kind of pain again. After a while, the assistant returned to the ward, carrying many gifts. Juliet glanced at them briefly. All expensive, high-end supplements. These are gifts President Rodriguez prepared for you. He hopes you'll keep quiet about what happened in the mountain area, especially that nothing about Miss Laura's experience there reaches anyone else. Juliet understood instantly. A bitter smile curved her lips. After all these years of marriage, Oliver had never given her a single gift. Now, the first time he did so was to protect Laura's reputation, to buy her silence. At this moment, Juliet felt nothing but relief. Relief that she didn't love him at all. After being discharged again, Juliet instinctively didn't want to go home right away. Or rather, go back to that cage. She wandered alone through the streets, almost greedily breathing in the fresh air. Walking into a shopping mall, she suddenly stopped in front of a jewelry counter. She saw a ring of breathtaking beauty. It looked remarkably like a piece designed by someone she once knew. Juliet stared at the ring, tears welling up instantly in her eyes as she drifted into a daze. What are you doing here? A familiar male voice from behind shattered her thoughts. Chapter 6. Turning around, she saw Oliver standing in front of the counter, casting a probing look her way. The tears in Juliet's eyes hadn't fully faded yet, but the moment she saw him, her expression turned cold. She had just started to explain when Oliver cut her off. You followed me? Oliver looked at Juliet with a complicated expression, somehow arriving at that conclusion on his own. He truly hadn't expected it. Her body had only just recovered. No, it hadn't even fully recovered yet, and she was already so eager to come looking for him. Coupled with the lingering tears in her eyes, Oliver felt an inexplicable softening in his heart. Did she really like him that much, so much that she needed to see him at all times? Unfortunately, the only one he loved now was Laura. Between him and Juliet, It was never meant to be. Oliver awkwardly turned his head away and picked up the neatly packaged jewelry on the counter. His gaze happened to fall on Juliet's bare, empty neckline, and he hesitated before speaking. These pieces were all custom-made for Laura. If you need something, I could also. No need. Juliet turned her head aside and replied softly. Oliver paused, assuming she was sulking, and was about to say more, but she had already turned and walked straight away, heading across the street as if something terrifying were chasing her. Watch out! A black car sped past. Oliver rushed forward, grabbed Juliet's wrist, and yanked her back. The car brushed past the hem of her clothes, dangerously close, but ultimately a narrow escape. Juliet lost her footing and fell straight into his arms. Warmth spread instantly. Oliver lowered his head, her faintly scented hair right within reach. Both of them froze for a moment. Oliver, you too. Suddenly, a shocked cry rang out not far away. Laura stood there, eyes wide in disbelief as she stared at them, her face pale. Oliver snapped back to his senses and shoved Juliet away at once. He hurriedly straightened his clothes and explained, Laura, it was just an accident. The situation was urgent. I just pulled her back instinctively. Laura slowly shook her head, clearly unconvinced. Her eyes reddened as she swayed unsteadily. Oliver, there's no need to explain. You asked Miss Cruz to come here on purpose, didn't you? It seems I'm the one who's intruding. With that, Laura covered her face and turned away. Oliver hurried after her, never once looking back at Juliet. That night, several text messages from unfamiliar numbers popped up on Juliet's phone. She opened them. They were photos, Oliver holding Laura in his arms, his face full of concern, with expensive gifts piled beside them as if money were no object. Right after that, another message came through. Are you free? Come out and talk. Juliet remained silent for a few seconds, then decided to go out anyway, by the quiet lakeside late at night. I know what you want to say, but I can guarantee you, it was an accident. If you don't believe me, you can check the surveillance footage. Juliet spoke first. Laura let out a scoff, her face full of disdain. Juliet, stop pretending. We're both women. Don't think I don't know what you're really thinking. If you didn't like Oliver at all, why would you have married him without hesitation in the first place? Faced with her relentless questioning, Juliet could only sigh. Believe it or not. With that, she turned away helplessly, wanting to leave, but Laura seemed enraged by her indifferent attitude and grabbed Juliet fiercely. You're not going anywhere. Explain yourself properly. Amid the pushing and pulling, the two of them unknowingly drew closer and closer to the edge of the lake. Suddenly, Juliet's foot slipped, with a loud splash. Icy cold lake water engulfed her in an instant. Laura screamed in fright and fell to the ground. Juliet struggled desperately in the water. She vaguely heard chaotic noises around her as her consciousness slowly faded. When she woke again, a familiar figure rushed toward her at full speed. Chapter 7. Oliver's eyes were bloodshot, fine red veins spreading across them as he stared fixedly at her face. Juliet had just opened her mouth when his words cut her off abruptly. Juliet, you must clarify this immediately. Last night, you fell into the lake on your own. Right now, everyone online is attacking Laura. They all think she pushed you. Think so? Juliet sneered inwardly. Laura did push her. Why should she clarify anything? What's more, once she clarified it, Laura would instead become the victim. When that happened, the Cruz family would inevitably be dragged into the public backlash, and it might even affect their plans. I refuse. Juliet's voice was soft, but unwavering. Oliver suddenly grabbed her wrist, the force so great it felt as if he were about to crush her bones. Juliet, I'm not negotiating with you. You have to clarify this. His gaze was icy, his voice laced with undisguised threat. As soon as the words fell, Laura rushed in. Last night, it was Miss Cruz who asked me to meet her by the lake. She said a few things, then suddenly started accusing me of being fake and hypocritical. And then I really couldn't take it anymore. So we argued, but my hand never even touched Miss Cruz. She slipped and fell in on her own. She spoke with absolute certainty. Juliet hurriedly reached for the phone beside her and turned it on, only to realize that the text messages had already been deleted. Her heart sank completely. So, they had planned this all along. As long as you're willing to clarify, you can ask for any compensation afterward. Oliver's voice grew even heavier. Impossible. The words escaped Juliet's lips without hesitation. The man's brows drew together sharply. He pressed his lips into a thin line, a storm slowly brewing in his eyes. He stood up abruptly. Someone, fill the swimming pool with ice, then throw her in. Several black-clad bodyguards filed in at once, lifting the thinly dressed Juliet and dragging her outside. Bang! With a heavy splash, she was thrown mercilessly into the water. Icy water pierced through her clothes, flooding her mouth and nose, bringing with it a suffocating wave of terror. Juliet instinctively thrashed in the water, struggling to surface, but she couldn't stop herself from sinking farther and farther away from the surface. Early the next morning, Juliet was woken by the cold. Her entire body was submerged in water, completely numb. Suddenly, noise came from the edge of the pool as the bodyguards added even more ice. 3 days later, Juliet's entire body was frozen purple and blue. She trembled uncontrollably, her consciousness hazy. I'm willing to clarify. I'll clarify. She could no longer hold on, murmuring weakly. Seeing that Juliet had finally given in, Oliver ordered someone to pull her out. He immediately had her face the camera and read through the prepared script word for word. Once the recording ended, Juliet's vision went black and she collapsed. In her daze, she seemed to hear someone speaking nearby. President Rodriguez, if you do this, aren't you afraid your wife will divorce you? Divorce? Oliver let out a scoff, not taking the words to heart at all. In his eyes, Juliet loved him to the extreme. How could she ever divorce him? Don't joke around. She can't leave me. Hearing that, Juliet felt nothing but bitter irony. She truly wouldn't leave him. But that she wasn't Juliet, it was the real Miss Cruz. As long as the cooperation between the two families hadn't ended, they would never separate. That was all. When she opened her eyes again, Oliver sat by the bed and lifted his gaze coldly. The matter has been settled. Tell the assistant whatever compensation you want. In 3 days, it'll be grandfather's birthday banquet. I'll come pick you up. The old master of the Rodriguez family had once been a formidable figure in the business world. His birthday banquet wouldn't just gather the Rodriguez family, it would also bring together prominent figures from across the industry. At the same time, it would be the perfect opportunity for the real Miss Cruz to make her first public appearance. The moment Oliver turned and left, Juliet unconsciously curved her lips into a smile. Finally, that day was finally coming. Chapter 8. Over the next 3 days, Oliver stayed by the side of the severely traumatized Laura the entire time, never returning home even once. Whether intentionally or not, Laura kept posting updates on WeChat, constantly showing where the two of them were. They went deep into the forest to rescue injured wild animals. Kissing beneath the first rays of morning sunlight, they went to the world-famous bioluminescent sea, walking hand in hand along the shore as the tide ebbed and flowed at night. They went to an ancient, time-worn temple, donated a large sum of money in Laura's name, and made wishes together before the solemn Buddha statue. Until the final day, Laura called, her tone openly provocative. Juliet, I advise you to give up sooner rather than later. You've seen it yourself. He's been with me these past few days. In Oliver's heart, I'll always come first. As for you, you never had even the slightest chance. Hearing that, Juliet inexplicably curved her lips into a smile. Laura didn't know that Juliet had never needed any chance to begin with, because before tomorrow night, she would completely leave the Rodriguez family, and leave Oliver for good. Juliet remained silent, finding it pointless to continue. Laura soon hung up. Not long after, someone from the Cruz family arrived to deliver a message. You should count yourself lucky that what happened a few days ago didn't affect us. Otherwise, you wouldn't get a single cent. Madame Cruz's arrogant words still echoed in her ears. The money has already been transferred to your account. This is your flight ticket for tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. Don't be late. Juliet nodded, lowered her eyes, and waited for them to leave. That evening, when she saw the balance in her account, she couldn't help but smile sincerely. For the first time in a long while, this sum of money was enough to fulfill all of Juliet's dreams. She finally could live the life she wanted. On the day of the birthday banquet, Laura still didn't miss any chance to flaunt her closeness with Oliver, posting intimate photos of the two of them on WeChat. Juliet turned off her phone, her heart completely calm. The only thing she felt was the excitement of imminent freedom. She quietly zipped up her suitcase, pulled up the handle, and walked toward the door. Just as she reached the entrance, she paused. "Oh, right, please pack up that pot of roses as well. I'd like to give it to a friend." Juliet nodded to Auntie Chin, the housekeeper, her gaze softening instantly. The Rodriguez family's garden was vast, but among all the flowers, only that pot of white roses in the corner had been raised by her own hands. She couldn't bear to part with it, so she wanted to take it with her. "When Oliver Rodriguez comes back, tell him I'll go directly to the Rodriguez family estate later, so he doesn't need to wait for me." With that, Juliet walked out of the Rodriguez residence and got into the car headed for the airport. She leaned back in her seat, quietly watching the scenery outside the window. The view outside changed rapidly, just like the past 20-odd years of her life, hollow, fleeting, and seemingly meaningless. But it didn't matter. Juliet clenched her phone in her hand, comforting herself. From now on, every single day of her life would be a good one. Meanwhile, the real Miss Cruz, Amanda, was already on her way to the Rodriguez family estate. To avoid raising suspicion, she would continue using the name Juliet. When the time was right, she would change it back. Upon arriving at the Rodriguez residence, she stepped out of the car in a custom haute couture gown, elegant and composed. Oliver happened to get out of another car at the same time, with the exquisitely dressed Laura following behind him. The two groups looked up and came face to face. Chapter 9. Oliver parted his lips. Instinctively, he wanted to ask her why she hadn't waited for him at home, but Amanda merely cast him a brief glance, lifted her chin arrogantly, and walked into the residence on her own. Oliver froze for a moment. For some reason, he felt that Juliet seemed different, but perhaps it was just what happened last time that had left some resentment in her heart. That must be why she was acting this way on purpose. That was how Oliver convinced himself. When he entered with Laura, he discovered that Amanda had already greeted the old master of the Rodriguez family and offered her birthday wishes. No one knew what the two of them talked about, but the old man was laughing heartily, nodding again and again. The moment old Master Rodriguez saw Oliver Rodriguez arrive late, with Laura following behind him, his face darkened on the spot. "Today is my 80th birthday. You bring some irrelevant woman here. Are you trying to anger me to death?" Laura's face instantly turned pale. She looked helplessly at Oliver, at a complete loss. Oliver immediately stepped in front of her and lowered his head in apology. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I was late. Laura, she just sincerely came to wish you a happy birthday. There was no other intention." Old Master Rodriguez shot his brows up and snorted coldly. "No need." Faced with such blunt rejection, Laura's tears were on the verge of falling. She bit her lower lip, her eyes reddening, looking pitiful and fragile, left with no choice. Oliver hurriedly offered his birthday wishes and led Laura to their seats, after finally calming her emotions. Some time later, Oliver lifted his head and saw Amanda mingling effortlessly among the guests, conversing with ease. He couldn't help feeling surprised. For more than 2 years, she had stayed at home most of the time, barely knowing anyone in the business world, let alone understanding all its hidden twists and turns. Yet now, as she chatted and socialized, how could she look so practiced? Oliver stared at her intently, even drifting off in thought. Seeing this, Laura tugged at his sleeve in dissatisfaction and asked knowingly, "Oliver, what are you looking at?" Only then did he snap back to his senses. He cleared his throat, his gaze flickering. "Nothing. I was just spacing out." Amanda spoke with grace and poise, elegant yet radiant. She formed a stark contrast to Laura, who could only hide behind Oliver. The guests began whispering among themselves. What on earth is the Rodriguez heir thinking? He has such a beautiful, dazzling wife, yet he won't cherish her, insisting on keeping such an unpresentable woman on the side. Who knows? Maybe rich people just have unusual tastes. If I were him, I'd want to keep Miss Cruz at home every single day. I'd never act like him, running around outside all the time. Hey, keep it down. Don't let anyone hear you. Hearing this, Oliver slowly lifted his gaze, his eyes flickering. No one knew what he was thinking. Laura, meanwhile, clenched her teeth quietly. jealousy filling her eyes. Why? Oliver clearly favored her, so why were they still praising Juliet instead? Suddenly, something seemed to occur to her. She symbolically ate a few bites, then stood up and excused herself, saying she needed some fresh air. Not long after, "This is bad. Laura is missing." The assistant rushed over to Oliver and whispered something urgently in his ear. Oliver's expression changed instantly. He strode straight toward Amanda. He grabbed her wrist tightly, his gaze dark and chilling, a faint, barely visible flame hidden within. "Laura has been kidnapped. Her life and death are unknown." Amanda froze, utterly baffled, and struggled hard. "What does that have to do with me?" Oliver held her firmly, his voice low and cold. "Someone saw it with their own eyes. Your people took Laura away. You have to come with me to find her." Chapter 10. Let go. Oliver. In front of everyone. "Do you have any respect left for the Cruz family? For the old master at all?" Amanda struggled desperately, fury bursting out of her voice. The banquet instantly descended into chaos as everyone turned to look. Even old Master Rodriguez was alarmed and sternly ordered him to let go at once. But Oliver acted as if he hadn't heard a thing, continuing to do exactly as he pleased, ignoring all attempts to stop him. He gripped Amanda's wrist tightly and dragged her straight to the car. The priceless gown on Amanda's body was torn in several places, her carefully styled hair left in disarray. She looked utterly bedraggled. She was just about to say something when someone struck her from behind, knocking her unconscious. When she woke again, the car had already stopped. How much time had passed? She didn't know. The door opened. To prevent her from escaping, Oliver had shackled her wrist with an iron chain. The delicate skin was instantly rubbed raw, a vivid red mark appearing. Amanda couldn't help but flare up in anger again. "Oliver, I advise you to stop while you still can." She was, after all, the Cruz family's eldest daughter. How dare he treat her like this? Oliver ignored her completely. Instead, he pulled the other end of the chain and dragged her forward without the slightest dignity, straight toward the kidnappers. "Oliver, save me!" Laura was there, tears clinging to her lashes, her body trembling, her voice shaking, pitiful and fragile. A masked man held her hostage, revealing only a pair of vicious, cold eyes. "Don't come any closer." The man lowered his voice, tightening his grip on the dagger. The sharp blade pressed against that fragile artery. Laura froze instantly, even her sobbing stopping mid-breath. Oliver turned and shot Amanda a fierce glare, then looked back at Laura. He deliberately softened his tone. "Laura, don't be afraid. I'm here. Just tell the truth. Was it Juliet who sent people to kidnap you today?" Laura deliberately glanced fearfully at Amanda and spoke hesitantly. Really, it was my own fault. I ran out by myself and got kidnapped by bad people. It has absolutely nothing to do with Miss Cruz." Her highly suggestive look and explanation made the truth impossible not to doubt. Amanda let out a cold laugh, shaking her head in anger. She had only just arrived and never imagined that beside her so-called husband, there would be such a formidable woman. Seeing Laura like this, a flash of pain crossed Oliver's eyes. His gaze darkened, as if he had suddenly grasped the whole picture. His expression tightened, the air around them seeming to freeze, heavy with tension and oppression. "Juliet, I'll give you one last chance. Release her." Amanda glanced at him coldly, her voice calm, as though it had nothing to do with her. "Even if you gave me 100 chances, it would be useless, because they have nothing to do with me at all." Oliver was about to speak when the kidnapper cut him off abruptly. "Enough nonsense. Are you saving her or not?" Oliver clenched his teeth and glared at Amanda, forcing out a single word. "Yes." The kidnapper narrowed his eyes, his expression unreadable. "Fine, I'll release her, but one life for another. As long as you personally push the person beside you off the cliff, I'll let her go. How about that?" Oliver couldn't help letting out a mocking laugh. "Sure." He turned his head, disdain filling his eyes. "Juliet, if you wanted to know your place in my heart, you could have just asked. Was it really necessary to stage such a clumsy farce?" Amanda looked utterly confused, unable to understand a word he was saying. But in the next second, Oliver shoved Amanda off the cliff without a moment's hesitation. She screamed, her body plummeting uncontrollably, terror flooding her mind. The vegetation along the cliff tore at her skin, bright red blood seeping out. Amanda felt her internal organs slam and churn violently, as if they were about to be crushed out of her body. Then, searing pain swallowed her whole. She slowly closed her eyes, her consciousness fading into darkness. Chapter 11. So you really are hard to kill. A sharp, piercing voice came from above, laced with undisguised contempt. Amanda forced her eyes open and saw Laura standing before her, completely unharmed, looking down at her from above. Oliver and everyone else were long gone. The entire mountain forest was left with only the two of them, pushed off such a high cliff. And you actually survived. Laura curled her lips. The once innocent, sweet eyes were now filled with viciousness and malice. Amanda parted her cracked lips. Her voice was weak, yet firm. Everything today was a setup you orchestrated yourself, wasn't it? That's right. The kidnappers were my people. Laura spread her hands indifferently, no longer bothering to hide anything. See? All it takes is one sentence from me, and Oliver will believe me without question. And you? You mean nothing to him. As she spoke, her smugness only grew. Amanda coughed twice, a nauseating metallic taste filling her mouth. Aren't you afraid that Oliver will find out about this? Laura suddenly laughed, loud, reckless laughter. She stepped hard on Amanda's injured hand, suddenly increasing the pressure, grinding down repeatedly with force. Even if he finds out, he won't say a word, because he loves me, only me. Her crisp laughter echoed through the forest, flaunting her triumph. A searing pain shot up from Amanda's fingertips. Her eyes widened instantly, brows knitting tightly, hatred surging so violently she wished she could tear Laura to pieces. Only after a long moment did Laura finally lift her foot. Amanda gritted her teeth, enduring the pain as she pushed herself up from the ground. Even a mistress with no status or standing dared to treat her like this. She couldn't even imagine what kind of life Juliet had endured in the Rodriguez household before. Slowly, Amanda wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes gleamed terrifyingly bright, like a starving wolf in the dark. The next second, bang! A solid punch landed squarely on Laura's face, producing a dull, heavy thud. Her pale cheek immediately swelled red, the sight shocking. Laura clutched her face in disbelief, pointing at Amanda with a trembling finger. Juliet, how dare you hit me? Believe it or not, I'll make sure you never leave this forest alive. Really? Amanda curved her lips into a cold smile, her gaze still dangerously calm. She had just used the last bit of battery on her phone to send a message to the Cruz family. A helicopter would be dispatched to pick her up soon. Then I think, the one who won't be leaving is you. The moment the words fell, Amanda lunged forward, punching Laura again and again, her fists slamming into the face Laura took such pride in. After her body recovered, she had refused to keep suffering through illness and pain, voluntarily training in kickboxing and combat. Dealing with an unarmed Laura was effortless. Punches fell like rain. Laura had no power to fight back at all. Ah, ah. Laura's screams echoed again and again through the forest, her voice breaking as she begged for mercy. But Amanda had never been soft-hearted. One hand grabbed Laura by the collar, the other striking relentlessly, clean, precise movements. In a daze, a question surfaced in Laura's mind. That obedient, submissive Juliet, how had she become like this? Before, no matter how Oliver treated her, she never complained, silently enduring everything. But this time, how was this even possible? A few minutes later, help! Laura's face was battered and bruised. She opened her mouth, her voice so faint it was barely audible. Amanda raised her fist again, ready to continue, when she was suddenly interrupted. Stop! Chapter 12. Oliver rushed over, panting, and blocked Laura just in time, his face ashen. Did you do this to Laura? Laura instantly lunged forward, clutching tightly at his sleeve, breaking down as she cried. It was her. I didn't do anything at all. And Miss Cruz suddenly rushed at me and started hitting me. Oliver, my face hurts so much. Seeing her like this, Amanda Cruz didn't deny it. She merely let out a cold snort. Yes, I did it. I hit you. As she spoke, she shot Laura a vicious look, frightening her into stumbling backward and hastily hiding behind Oliver. Juliet, Laura was worried about your safety and came looking for you out of kindness. Don't you think you've gone too far? Oliver's brows were tightly knitted, his lips pressed together, the anger in his eyes nearly enough to ignite the air around them. She set everything up and turned me into this state. How is that not too far? Amanda's gaze darkened. She met his eyes head-on. Fearless. I know I misunderstood you about what happened today, but how could you frame Laura like this? I know her. She would never do something like that. Oliver's expression was cold and resolute. As though utterly convinced, Amanda let out a mocking laugh. As if she had just heard the biggest joke imaginable. Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And just because you're blind doesn't mean everyone else is. At those words, Oliver froze for a brief moment. Juliet had never spoken to him in this tone before, never lashed back at him so mercilessly. How had she become like this? Seeing that he wasn't speaking, Amanda went straight past him, intent on leaving. Before the helicopter arrived, she had no desire to stay with the two of them for even a second longer. Oliver snapped back to his senses and immediately blocked her path. No, you can't leave. And why not? Amanda turned back, her sharp gaze stabbing into him painfully. Oliver's expression shifted. After a long pause, he spoke haltingly. You hit Laura. This can't just be let go. Amanda's face darkened, impatience flooding her eyes. Move, or I'll tell everyone that this so-called charity angel is nothing more than a homewrecker, a mistress who destroys other people's families. And you too, Oliver. Do you really think no one knows the things you've done? Oliver grabbed her wrist hard, gritting his teeth. You know when to stop. The sudden tug yanked painfully at the wound on Amanda's arm. She hissed as the jagged gash split open again, blood spilling out once more. Oliver looked at her coldly, not a trace of pity in his eyes. Stop pretending, Juliet. No matter how badly injured you pretend to be, I won't have even the slightest feelings for you. I've said it before, I only love Laura. Hearing that, Amanda almost rolled her eyes out of reflex. Did he really think that everything she did was meant to attract his attention? She had no interest in, and no desire to, compete with Laura for his affection. The only thing Amanda wanted was the title of Mrs. Rodriguez and the endless interest flowing to the Cruz family. WHRRR. The roar of a helicopter sounded overhead. Amanda finally let out a breath of relief. She cast them one last cold glance, pressed a hand to her wound, and climbed up the ladder with swift, decisive movements. After she left, Laura's eyes reddened again. Her long lashes trembled like fragile cicada wings, as if she had suffered a great injustice. Oliver, look at my injuries. You have to give me justice, she cried as she threw herself into his arms, whining and complaining just like before. But for some reason, as Oliver looked at the swelling on her face, he felt no pity at all. Instead, her crying sounded strangely irritating. He responded perfunctorily, his thoughts still stuck on Juliet's shocking transformation. Why exactly was that? It was as if, overnight, she had become an entirely different person. Chapter 13. A few days later, at the shopping mall. I'm sorry, Miss Laura. This limited edition bag was the last one. It was just purchased by this lady. How about taking a look at something else? The manager bent slightly, speaking carefully with a troubled expression. Laura curled her lips, a determined glint flashing in her eyes. No, I want this one. I'll pay 3 times the price. Tell her to hand it over, now. Amanda let out a soft laugh, rolled her eyes disdainfully, and replied with effortless ease. I'll pay 10 times. Laura's face flushed red with anger. After a long pause, she ground her teeth and forced out, I'll pay 15 times. To her surprise, Amanda laughed even harder, looking at her as if she were a clown jumping around on stage. Laura, someone like you actually thinks you're qualified to compete with the Cruz family in terms of money? That sentence completely set her off. Laura clenched her fingers tightly, her nails digging deep into her flesh, yet she felt no pain at all. I'll pay 20 times. She stared fixedly at Amanda, a triumphant smile on her lips. Her eyes filled only with obsession over winning. How strange, Amanda said, feigning surprise as she looked around. This is such a big mall. How come I'm hearing dogs barking? Her gaze finally settled on Laura's face. Oh, it's you. Laura, sorry, so it was you talking just now. I thought. She left the rest unsaid, casting a meaningful look. The surrounding staff lowered their heads, yet couldn't help stifling laughter. Laura frowned deeply, fists clenched, her heaving chest barely containing the raging fury inside her. She cleared her throat, each word squeezed out through gritted teeth. No matter how much she bids, I'll offer double her price. So now, the bag should be mine, right? Before the manager could even respond, Amanda clapped her hands in applause. Of course, as expected of Laura, so rich and generous. Since that's the case, I'll personally hand the bag to you. She stepped forward, pretending to offer it with both hands, but just as Laura was about to take it, Amanda suddenly let go. With a sharp bang, the designer bag worth millions crashed onto the floor. Laura's face turned livid, her anger reaching its peak. She couldn't help but shout, "Juliet, what right do you have to treat me like this? Have you forgotten how it felt last time you were thrown into the pool?" Her eyes widened, a dangerous gleam flashing within them. Amanda showed no fear at all. Instead, she narrowed her eyes with amusement. "So what, you're saying you want to throw me into a pool again?" Laura raised her brows smugly. "What? Scared now? That feeling wasn't very pleasant, was it?" Amanda's smile vanished as she barked coldly. "Do you dare? I am the sole heir of the Cruise Group. My mother controls assets worth hundreds of billions. My father runs the entire corporation. If you lay a hand on me, aren't you afraid of their retaliation?" Despite her domineering tone, Laura subconsciously stepped back a few paces, yet she still didn't believe a word. Back when Juliet was tortured so badly, the Cruise family never stepped in, never even cared. How could they suddenly start protecting her now? Laura was convinced Amanda was just bluffing. "What am I afraid of? Don't think I don't know. The Cruise family won't care about you at all." As she spoke, she signaled behind her. Several bodyguards immediately rushed forward. "Take her away. Throw her into the pool." Amanda swiftly stepped back and snapped her fingers. "Get her. Hold her down." In an instant, dozens of black-clad bodyguards emerged, surrounding them completely. Laura's face went pale. These were the Cruise family's people. 20 minutes later, Laura was brought to the edge of an enormous swimming pool. One more step forward, and she would plunge into its unfathomable depths. Amanda sat casually on a lounge chair nearby, one leg crossed over the other, looking thoroughly pleased. "This is the largest pool in the city. Since our charity angel loves inviting people for a swim so much, I should return the favor. Otherwise, wouldn't I seem rude? Don't you agree?" "Yes." A chorus of voices answered in unison behind her. Laura shuddered. She shakily tried to turn around, but Amanda moved faster than lightning, slamming Laura's entire head straight into the water. Laura struggled desperately, but her hands and feet were bound tight. "Let me go. I can't breathe." "Juliet, you bastard." This went on for dozens of rounds. When Laura was finally dragged back up, tears streamed uncontrollably from her eyes. Her makeup was completely ruined, her appearance utterly wretched. "Laura!" A shout rang out nearby. Chapter 14. "Laura, are you all right?" Oliver rushed over and hurriedly untied the layers of rope binding Laura's body. He had received the news early and rushed over as fast as he could, but he was still a step too late. Laura could no longer hold herself together. She threw herself straight into Oliver's arms and broke down in tears. "Juliet. Juliet tried to drown me. She's getting revenge on you for throwing her into the pool last time. She wanted to vent all her anger on me." Her body trembled slightly as she leaned weakly against him, tears welling in her eyes. Amanda rolled her eyes without the slightest courtesy. She was the one who came looking for trouble. "I merely returned the favor in kind." Oliver's expression turned cold, his thin lips pressing into a straight line. Even if Laura really did say a few harsh words, "You didn't have to try to kill her." Before he could finish, a casual voice cut in. "Then you're truly kind-hearted." "Unfortunately, I can't be." Amanda shot him a glance, gracefully lifted her newly purchased bag, and turned to leave under the escort of several bodyguards. Only after Oliver sent Laura home did she continue crying and complaining nonstop. "Oliver, she's gone completely out of control. I'm your woman. Yet she dared to bring people from the Cruz family and openly drag me there to torture me. Oliver, you have to teach her a lesson. You must give me an explanation. Laura spoke pitifully, lightly biting her lower lip. Her trembling voice carried vulnerability and grievance, her eyes brimming with tears. She had thought Oliver would be like before, immediately issuing orders to avenge her. But he didn't. He merely lowered his head, stayed silent for a long moment, then spoke softly. Laura, I still have ongoing cooperation with the Cruz family for now. This time, let it go. With that, Oliver stood up quickly and left her house without another word. Laura froze where she stood, staring blankly at his retreating figure. She knew the Rodriguez and Cruz families had always cooperated, but he had never said anything like this before. This time, he was clearly, deliberately siding with that little bitch Juliet. Once that thought settled, Laura's mind was instantly flooded with a vicious jealousy. She obsessively replayed everything that had happened over the past few days, comparing photos of Juliet from before and now again and again. Finally, she noticed something. Though the faces in the two sets of photos looked extremely similar, there were still some minute differences. Differences subtle enough to prove one thing: the former Juliet and the current Juliet were not the same person at all. Laura secretly slipped into Juliet's room and took a strand of her hair. She immediately had it sent to a testing center. Luckily, she had been cautious earlier and kept a copy of Juliet's DNA data from long ago. 2 days later, the testing center called. Based on the comparison of the two DNA samples, we can state with certainty these samples do not belong to the same person at all. The moment the words fell, a flash of excitement burst into Laura's eyes. The Cruz family had found someone to impersonate Juliet, meaning something must have happened to the real Juliet. If she could expose this fake Juliet, wouldn't that mean she had a chance to become the true mistress of the Rodriguez family? Thinking of this, Laura hastily gathered all the evidence and set off eagerly to find Oliver. Meanwhile, Oliver felt his thoughts in complete disarray these past few days. He sat quietly on the sofa, lost in thought. Suddenly, he overheard servants nearby whispering, "Madam hasn't been to the small garden for a long time. She talks about the stock market and figures all day now. I never heard her mention things like that before." Another nodded repeatedly in agreement. Exactly. She used to love napping in the afternoon sun. But last night, Madam suddenly asked me to replace all the curtains with blackout ones. She said she can't sleep with even a bit of light. Now that you mention it, that is strange. In that instant, something seemed to click in Oliver's mind. He strode quickly into the small garden and hurried to the farthest corner. But the flower that had once been placed there was gone, leaving behind only an inconspicuous empty spot. Oliver froze where he stood, memories from long ago surfacing. Juliet had always liked standing there, staring blankly at that rose bush. Later, he had asked the servants. Only then did he learn that the white rose had been planted by her own hands, from seed to sprout to bloom, nurtured little by her personally. To her, that flower had meant something very special. And now, that rose was gone. Did that mean Juliet had already left too? Chapter 15. The moment he became aware of that thought, an overwhelming fear surged through Oliver's heart. He rose to his feet in a daze, his body trembling slightly. Only then did he realize that so many things in the house had already changed. It wasn't just the potted roses. The faint gardenia scent that once lingered on the sofa had disappeared without him noticing. Even that plain, unremarkable bowl of millet porridge that used to appear every morning seemed to have been gone for a long time. The bedroom, the kitchen, the living room, there was no trace of her anywhere. Juliet was like a dream, completely erased from his world. What was terrifying was this: he had only just realized it now. At that moment, Laura rushed in head-on and blurted out in a panic, "Oliver, this Juliet is a fake. She's not Juliet at all. These are their DNA test reports. The results show that they only look alike. They're not the same person." After hearing this, Oliver keenly caught onto one detail. "How did you know all this? And why do you have Juliet's original DNA data?" Laura's face instantly turned deathly pale. She stammered for a long time but couldn't utter a single word. Seeing this, Oliver merely shot her a cold glance, grabbed his coat, and headed out. To the Cruz family, Laura was left standing there alone, her fingers slowly curling into a fist as hatred once again surfaced in her eyes. As soon as Oliver arrived downstairs at the company, he was stopped. "Sorry, sir, you can't go up without an appointment. Move." Oliver cast him a cold look, an intimidating aura radiating from his entire body. The man no longer dared to block him and awkwardly lowered his hand. Oliver shoved open the office door and saw Amanda sitting steadily behind the desk, unhurriedly flipping through the documents in front of her. She lifted her gaze, seemingly surprised. "Oliver? What are you doing here?" Oliver let out a cold laugh and walked straight up to her. His towering stance was overwhelmingly oppressive. "I remember, you never used to stay at the company at all. Your father never let you get involved in any of the Cruz family's business either. So why are you suddenly so skilled now? As if you've been doing this for a long time?" He deliberately dragged out the last words, his gaze growing darker. Amanda tightened her grip on the cup in her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly as a wave of guilt washed over her. She parted her lips faintly, her expression flustered, her voice low and weak. "Because you're not Juliet at all." Oliver cut her off mercilessly. He braced his long arms against the desk and advanced toward her step by step. "Say it. Who are you? Really?" Amanda took a deep breath and decided to stop hiding it. "That's right. My name is Amanda Cruz. I'm the real eldest daughter of the Cruz family." Hearing this, Oliver's mind fell into turmoil. "Then what about her? Where's Juliet?" "Juliet?" Amanda let out a scornful laugh, her expression full of disdain, before instantly returning to her former arrogance. "She's just an orphan who grew up in a welfare home. She was lucky enough to receive funding from our Cruz family, so she got to take the Cruz surname along with it." Oliver's expression darkened instantly. His ruthless eyes narrowed slightly, and he looked as if he had gone mad. "I don't care who the real Cruz heiress is. The only thing I care about is, where is the real Juliet? Where is she?" Amanda froze for a moment, then said flatly, "No idea. Getting paid to do a job, that's only natural. The agreement for the substitute bride was only for 3 years. Now that time is up. As for where she went afterward, we have no right to interfere, nor any interest in doing so." Oliver's face turned icy cold, his gaze still as dark as ink. "Don't think the substitute marriage can just be brushed aside like this. I'll have my lawyer draft the divorce agreement and send it over. Your Cruz family should also pay the price it deserves." Amanda's expression changed as she tried to step forward to say something, but Oliver slammed the door and left, not giving her the slightest chance to explain. "No matter what it takes, find out where Juliet went." He issued a single order to all his subordinates, demanding that she be found within 3 days. 3 days later, news came back from his men. A month ago, the Cruz family had purchased a plane ticket to City C, thousands of miles away from here. Although no matter how they investigated, they couldn't find the name of the passenger. By instinct alone, Oliver knew it was her. Chapter 16. A seaside city where spring was always in bloom. A small cat and dog cafe officially opened for business. After leaving the Rodriguez family, Juliet had never truly found peace. In the dead of night, when she drifted in and out of sleep, those painful scenes from the past would always surface in her mind. Each memory, one after another, clung to her like a nightmare, impossible to shake off no matter what she did. So, Juliet decided to completely abandon that identity and change her name. She renamed herself Fiona Nan. Nan was taken from her late mother's surname, and the meaning behind you in her name carried the idea of roaming freely through the skies. While also being a homophone for freedom, it symbolized that from now on, she would live just like her name, free to roam the world, no longer bound by anyone or anything. After moving all the items in the shop into place, Fiona wiped the sweat from her forehead and finally sat down to catch her breath. The shop had just opened, and there weren't many customers yet, so managing everything alone was just enough for her. She had only just sat down when a fluffy white Samoyed suddenly pounced on her, nuzzling into her arms and acting spoiled. Fiona couldn't help laughing. She stood up, grabbed a bag of dog treats, tore it open, and took one out to tease the dog. Hello? Is anyone here?" The wind brushed past the wind chimes by the door, producing a crisp, tinkling sound. A clear male voice suddenly rang out behind her. Caught completely off guard, Fiona turned around and was instantly startled. She instinctively took a few steps back, her whole body tensing up. her voice trembling uncontrollably. Why you? How did you find this place? The man looked utterly confused and pointed at his own face. Hello, miss. Have you mistaken me for someone else? I'm here to buy some deworming medicine for my Coco. Fiona forced herself to calm down and took a closer look. Only then did she finally let out a sigh of relief. So, it wasn't him. Too similar. He looked far too much like Oliver. Without careful inspection, it was almost impossible to tell them apart. Seeing her still staring at him blankly, the man patiently explained a bit more. The nearest pet hospital is pretty far from here, so I thought I'd try my luck. I'm really not a bad guy. My name is Mario. I'm a marine environmental monitoring researcher working in this area. As he spoke, he deliberately took out his work ID to reassure her. A bright, easygoing smile appeared before her eyes. Fiona snapped back to her senses, forced a smile, and nodded apologetically. Sorry. I just mistook you for someone else. Mario waved his hands repeatedly. It's fine. It's fine. I just wanted to ask if you sell deworming medicine for cats. Yes, I do. I'll get it for you. With that, Fiona opened the cabinet and began searching from the first shelf. That's great. My Coco hasn't seemed quite right lately. I suspect she might need deworming. Hearing this, Fiona's movements paused. Not feeling well? Can you describe the symptoms more specifically? There are many reasons a cat might feel unwell. It's not necessarily because of parasites. Mario thought about it for a long time, then finally shook his head. I can't really say. She's just been really low energy and doesn't even want to eat her favorite cat treats anymore. Fiona deftly pulled out a box of medicine and handed it to him. How about this? I've learned a bit of veterinary knowledge before. If anything comes up, you can come to me anytime, since the shop just opened today. I'll give you this medicine for free. Mario froze, then hurriedly waved his hands in refusal. No, precisely because it just opened. You should take the money, it's good luck. After saying that, he insisted on paying with his phone. Fiona stood there in a daze, watching his hurried retreating figure. Suddenly, she felt that he was actually very different from that man. That night, heavy rain poured down relentlessly. Suddenly, a series of urgent knocks echoed from downstairs. Half asleep, Fiona turned on the light and realized that the cats and dogs on the first floor had all been startled awake, barking uneasily in their little nests. She put on her coat and went downstairs. Standing by the door, she called out cautiously, "Who is it?" "It's me, Miss Nan." Outside the door, Mario was panting heavily as he held an orange cat in his arms. Several strands of his hair were soaked by the rain and stuck messily to his forehead. His eyes filled with a plea for help as he looked at her. Chapter 17. I hadn't been home for long today. I gave Coco the deworming medicine, and then she ended up like this. As he spoke, he hurriedly explained. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your medicine. I just wanted to ask you to take a look and see what's going on with her. Fiona nodded in understanding and carefully took the cat from his arms, carrying her into a warmer, more comfortable room inside. Coco lay weakly on the soft cushion, half closing her eyes. She was so frail that even lifting her paws took a great deal of effort. Fiona's expression immediately turned serious. She asked Mario to wait outside the room, then put on gloves and began the examination. After quite a bit of effort, she finally came to a conclusion. Coco's just been experiencing some bloating recently. It's nothing serious. I've already given her a gentle abdominal massage. I'll also give you some medicine to help with gas and regulate her gut bacteria. Just remember to give it to her on time when you get back. And as for her diet, be careful. Try to establish good feeding habits, regular times and portions. Mainly cat food. Don't feed her soy products, greasy foods, or anything raw or cold. As she spoke, she shifted aside, revealing Coco behind her. The cat already seemed much more energetic. She stood up, lazily swished her tail, and even let out a slow, sleepy yawn toward Mario. Only then did Mario finally relax. Rainwater trickled down from his hair, dripping onto the floor with a steady tap. Tap. Thank you so much, Miss Nan. Without you, I really wouldn't have known what to do. How much is the consultation fee? I'll pay you right now. Fiona curved her lips slightly, a gentle smile on her face. No need. She's the very first patient I've seen here. According to our shop's opening promotion, there's no charge. Mario froze for a moment. This time, he didn't insist. After observing Coco's condition for a bit longer, he turned around and saw Fiona handing him a dry towel. Dry off. You got caught in the rain just now. It's easy to catch a cold. The moment Mario took the towel, their fingertips brushed by accident. The warmth instantly traveled from his fingers straight to his chest. His ears flushed red as he quickly pulled his hand back. Thank you. Fiona smiled faintly, her gaze falling on Coco, who had regained her energy after taking the medicine. Her eyes were warm and soft. From that day on, Mario began visiting the cat and dog cafe often. Sometimes he helped Fiona make coffee. Sometimes he helped her take care of the cats and dogs. Fiona would occasionally invite him to stay for a meal. And after closing time, the two of them would take leisurely walks along the beach. At noon, sunlight scattered down. Mario tilted his head slightly, as if his smile were rimmed with a layer of golden light. Fiona couldn't help but freeze, staring at him blankly. What is it? Is there something on my face? Mario straightened up at once, suddenly feeling awkward all over. She hurriedly looked away, shaking her head softly. No. For a moment, the atmosphere turned a little awkward. She lowered her head, staring at the soft sand beneath her feet, trying to change the subject. Yesterday Guagua ran out in the middle of the night, and we only managed to find her because you helped. You probably didn't get much rest, did you? How about I treat you to dinner tonight? I'll cook myself. She rattled it all off in one breath, forcing herself to lift her head and look at him. Mario had been about to refuse outright, but when he heard the second half, he stopped himself, looking into Fiona's bright, expectant eyes. He heard himself answer without hesitation. Sure. That evening, they went together to the largest local market to buy ingredients. Relying on the cooking skills she had once learned from an older mentor, Fiona prepared a table full of delicious dishes. Even the cats and dogs benefited, enjoying an extra hearty dinner. Mario couldn't stop praising her, nodding repeatedly. With skills like this, running just a cafe is such a waste. But compared to me, Coco seems to like your food even more. Fiona turned her head and saw an orange cat eagerly licking the very last bit of canned food from the bottom of the bowl, clearly still wanting more. After saying that, Mario smiled and blinked, revealing a perfect set of 8 teeth. Bang! A sharp explosion rang out from outside the window. Fireworks burst into the sky in the distance, golden sparks shooting straight upward, scattering bright colors like stars across the night. Fiona and Mario lifted their heads together. Neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, quietly savoring the beautiful moment. She suddenly felt that, being able to live such a steady, peaceful life now made all the pain of the past seem not so unbearable after all. Chapter 18. After finishing dinner, they sat together on the rooftop, watching fireworks and counting the stars. They exchanged smiles, like old friends reuniting after a long time apart, chatting over light liquor until dawn. The next day, Fiona groggily opened her eyes when something suddenly flashed through her mind, jolting her fully awake. Oh no! In her happiness last night, she had forgotten to close the railing downstairs. Her headache instantly worsened when she went downstairs to check. Sure enough, the beagle and the husky, notorious home-destroying champions, had already turned the entire place upside down. The kitchen, the bathroom, the main hall, nothing was spared. Everything was a complete mess. Even the freshly painted walls had patches of paint peeled off. Fiona looked around in utter despair, then resigned herself and rolled up her sleeves to start cleaning. It seemed there was no way the shop could open today. Just then, Mario, freshly washed up, came out of the bathroom. He took the cleaning tools from her hands and shook his head with mock regret. I was going to come upstairs and personally tell you this tragic news after washing up. Didn't expect you to discover it yourself first. Fiona let out a weary sigh and passed by him to head into the bathroom. An hour later, the place was mostly tidied up. She decided to go up to the third-floor storage room to do a more thorough cleanup. When she reached the very last corner, Fiona froze. These were the suitcases she had brought with her when she first arrived in City C. She struggled to lift one of the boxes. A soft thud sounded by her feet, as if something had fallen out. Fiona bent down to pick it up. It was a wooden hairpin. Along with the hairpin, a slip of paper fell out as well. On it was a line of neat, powerful handwriting. To my dear friend Suyuan. May you know nothing but peace and good health. Seeing those words, Fiona's fingertips began to tremble uncontrollably. Her nose stung, and her eyes quickly filled with tears. This was a keepsake from the former head of the orphanage, and also the elder she respected most. If it hadn't been for the old headmistress protecting her back then, Fiona might have been abandoned long ago. She never would have had the life she has now. After tidying up the shop, she took a blurry, unclear map and went to find Mario. Hesitation written all over her face. Mario, I want to visit an old friend of a grandmother I knew, but I don't know exactly where she lives. Could you help me take a look? Then you've found the right person, Mario said with a grin. I'm a local in City C. Anywhere you want to go, I can take you. He suddenly smiled, bright and clear, like a lake after the rain. For some reason, whenever Fiona saw his smile, she felt at ease, as if there was nothing in this world he couldn't handle. Mario quickly packed up and took her to several places that looked similar to the ones on the map. Walking through one old alley after another felt like stepping into a different world. Narrow stone paths, weathered walls, ancient doorways, everything exuded a deep sense of history. Sunlight filtered through the gaps between the leaves, scattering patches of light on the ground, like traces of time dancing at their feet. After turning through countless alleyways, they finally found a house that matched the map exactly. Only the front gate was tightly shut, making it impossible to see what was inside. Fiona returned to the entrance of the alley and politely asked a few elderly people who were sitting outside in chairs, enjoying the sun. Excuse me, does the Miss Suyuan live here? One of the elders waved his fan slowly, his expression full of regret. You're too late, young lady. She passed away, just last month. Since then, no one has lived in that house. Hearing this, Fiona felt as though everything around her had gone silent, as if the entire world had fallen into stillness. An indescribable sense of regret slowly spread from her heart to her limbs. Mario stood behind her and let out a soft sigh. He gently reached out. After hesitating for a long moment, he finally pulled her into his arms. She was so kind, so why did even her only friend end up like this? At that, Fiona couldn't hold back a tear. The new head of the orphanage was just like Laura and those other hypocrites, using the names of innocent children to line their own pockets, while caring nothing for whether the children lived or died. If it hadn't been for the old headmistress protecting them, even surviving would have been difficult. So why did it have to end like this? Juliet. Juliet, is that you? Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out from behind them. Chapter 19. Fiona's body stiffened, and all the color drained from her face. When she didn't respond, the person behind her lost patience and rushed forward. Who are you? Let go of Juliet. Right now. Seeing Fiona's reaction, Mario instinctively sensed that something was wrong. He immediately pulled her behind him, shielding her with his body. He straightened his back, and the warmth usually in his eyes sharpened into something cold and alert. And who are you? This has nothing to do with you. Oliver's gaze darkened, his voice low and dangerous. Her name is Juliet. I'm her husband. Sorry, you've got the wrong person. Fiona denied it at once. My name isn't Juliet. It's Fiona. Her expression was icy, as if she had truly never known him at all. Oliver was about to say more when his eyes suddenly fell on Mario standing beside her. A flash of surprise crossed his face, followed by sudden realization. Juliet, is this because you couldn't get my love, so you found someone who looks like me to comfort yourself? He shook his head with a confident smile. You really don't need to do this. As long as you're willing to come back, I promise I'll devote myself to you completely. I've thought about it carefully during this time. What I felt for Laura was just a bit of fleeting novelty. The one I truly love is you. After more than 2 years together, I've realized I fell in love with you a long time ago. Fiona let out a cold laugh and stared straight at him. Oliver, what makes you think I loved you to that extent? That I'd travel thousands of miles away, only to find a substitute who looks like you? Where does that confidence of yours even come from? The moment she spoke, Oliver felt as if her sharp words had pierced straight through his heart. Juliet had never spoken to him so harshly, not even when she was angry, which was rare to begin with. So this was what the real her was like. Oliver froze for a few seconds, then forced out a stiff smile. Juliet, we're husband and wife. You used to take care of me so attentively, wishing you could stay by my side every single moment. How could you possibly not love me? How could that be? He repeated the question over and over in his heart. He was asking her, but also asking himself. How could she not love him? Fiona merely glanced at him once before withdrawing her gaze, clearly unwilling to argue over such a question. Look, Juliet. Look, this is proof. Oliver fumbled in his pockets for several minutes and actually pulled out a bright red marriage certificate. The photo on it was unmistakably Fiona. She lifted the corner of her lips into a cold smile. Her eyes locked onto the black printed name. Oliver. Look carefully. The name on the marriage certificate is Amanda, not me. Oliver's body stiffened as he stared at the certificate in disbelief. All this time, he had never once properly looked at the name on it. His expression shifted, and his voice grew much quieter with shame. Juliet, just come back with me. These days, I've been drowning in regret. I've spent every day blaming myself. I kept thinking, clearly the person who truly cared about me and looked after me was you all along. So why was I so blind? Why did I always choose to protect someone else? As he spoke, his remorse seemed to reach its peak, his voice trembling, but Fiona didn't buy it at all. She glanced sideways at Oliver, her eyes filled with mockery. Oliver, don't you find what you're saying ridiculous? When Laura ran away from home, you made me sleep in the courtyard. When the charity gala caught fire, the first person you chose to save was her. You even abandoned me alone in the mountains, surrounded on all sides, just for her sake. And that's not even counting all the other things, there are too many to list. And now you're standing here, openly claiming you love me. Do you really have the nerve to say that? Oliver's face turned deathly pale. He stood there like a statue, completely frozen in place. All he could do was watch the figure he had longed for walk away from him once again. Chapter 20. A few days later, just as Fiona opened the shop door in the morning, a familiar figure appeared before her eyes. He looked as though he hadn't slept all night. His face was gaunt and pale, his eyes dull and lifeless, his entire body radiating exhaustion. The clothes on him were no longer neatly pressed, but hung wrinkled and disheveled, making him look utterly bedraggled. There was no trace left of the once polished Rodriguez air. When he saw her, Oliver Rodriguez's empty eyes instantly lit up. In the blink of an eye, he rushed over to her. Juliet, as long as you're willing to go back with me, I'll do anything. Fiona ignored him and continued organizing things behind the counter. Oliver stood there at a loss, forcing a smile. Then, is there anything I can help with? Still, there was no response. The bell at the door chimed as a customer came in, wanting to order a cup of coffee, but was startled by the look in Oliver's eyes as he stood at the counter, and immediately turned around and left. Fiona finally couldn't take it anymore. She lifted her head impatiently, annoyance written all over her face. What exactly do you want? Oliver pressed his lips tightly together, lowered his gaze to hide the disappointment in his eyes, and spoke with a hoarse edge to his voice. Juliet, I just want to help you move. Didn't you hear her say she doesn't need it? A merciless voice came from behind them. A tall man in a plain white t-shirt pushed the door open and stepped in, his expression dark as he positioned himself squarely in front of Fiona. Oliver recognized him at once. It was the man who had looked so close to Juliet that day. His face instantly darkened, his gaze sharpened, fierce light flashing in his eyes as he locked stares with him. This is between Juliet and me. It's none of your business. Mario didn't back down in the slightest, deliberately lowering his voice. Then you should be able to see even more clearly that she doesn't want to see you at all. Oliver subconsciously looked toward Fiona. She was still expressionless, as though nothing he did had anything to do with her. His resolve instantly collapsed. He turned back for one last look at Fiona, somewhere between unwillingness and despair, then walked out of the shop. From sunrise to sunset, until darkness fell outside and the shop closed. The temperature difference between day and night in City C was severe. His whole body trembled uncontrollably from the cold. Yet he still stood outside, silently watching the calm silhouette inside. When Fiona finally came out after closing, Oliver immediately stepped forward and blocked her path again. Juliet, please, come back with me. A fine rain fell hazily. His face was deathly pale, his eyes bloodshot, utterly shattered. Fiona glanced at him coldly and walked straight toward home, not wanting to respond at all. A white cat named Ivy padded over, cast him a disdainful sideways glance, and mercilessly swiped a paw at him. A sharp pain shot through the back of his hand, and Oliver let out a muffled groan. But Fiona still didn't turn back. Oliver stood there blankly, staring at her retreating figure, the corners of his eyes burning red. He clearly remembered, in the past, if he felt even slightly unwell, Juliet would immediately rush over to check on him, making all kinds of nourishing herbal dishes and personally taking care of his daily needs. But now, even when she saw him injured with her own eyes, she wouldn't spare him so much as a glance. A wave of overwhelming sorrow surged through his heart. Oliver instinctively stepped forward to chase after her. He grabbed Fiona's wrist, his voice nearly pleading, "Don't go. Juliet, I've already cut off contact with Laura. I promise, from now on, there will only be you by my side." At the mention of the name Laura, the person before him finally reacted. She lifted her eyes slightly, her voice calm, as casual as asking what he had for dinner. "Then do you know what Laura has done?" As she spoke, Fiona stared straight into his eyes. Her dark, shining gaze seemed intent on seeing straight through his soul. Oliver was startled by that look. His throat tightened, and for a moment, he couldn't say a single word. "Do you know how much profit she's reaped behind the scenes all these years? How many people she's harmed?" Fiona stared at him fiercely, her voice suddenly rising, every word striking straight to the heart. Oliver opened his mouth, but didn't answer. He didn't know. He had never tried to find out. After a long silence, Fiona curled her lips into a cold smile. A trace of disappointment flickered in her eyes, her expression once again utterly indifferent. "Of course, in your heart, Laura could never be wrong." Chapter 21. No, that's not true. Only then did Oliver react, desperately trying to deny it. "Juliet, don't worry, I'll investigate right now. I'll definitely uncover everything Laura has done." Bang! Before he could finish, the door slammed shut, cutting his voice off completely. Oliver froze. He could only lower his voice and mutter to himself, "I'll find out everything Laura has done. Every single thing." Then he lowered his head and let out a lonely, bitter smile. So this was it. She didn't even have the patience to listen to him finish a single sentence anymore. Turning around, Oliver shakily took out his phone and dialed his assistant. His voice was clenched tight with fury. "Investigate everything Laura has done over the years. Every detail. The more thorough, the better." After hanging up, he rushed to the nearest airport at top speed, only to unexpectedly run into Laura there. "Oliver, I finally found you. You have to come back with me. Everything at the company is in complete chaos." As usual, Laura threw herself weakly into his arms, completely unaware that the way Oliver looked at her had already changed. Oliver's face was dark, his eyes filled with an unfamiliar emotion, like a black hole ready to swallow her whole. "Why are you here?" Laura was inexplicably unnerved by his gaze. Her eyes flickered as she spoke. I was worried about you. You left without saying anything, and I was so anxious that I came to look for you myself." Oliver withdrew his gaze and said nothing more. Only then did she finally let out a breath of relief. After returning to the Rodriguez residence, Oliver went straight out to the company, while Laura excitedly wandered through the entire villa. Judging by his state, he clearly hadn't found Juliet, and now that the alliance with the Cruz family had been dissolved, didn't that mean she would become the future mistress of the Rodriguez family? Thinking of this, she hummed happily to herself, freely rearranging and fiddling with all the decorations in the house. Meanwhile, in the office, the assistant handed over the investigation files while holding his breath, so nervous he barely dared to breathe. Oliver took the documents. Instantly, his brows knitted together. Rage flared in his eyes, his face dark as storm clouds before a downpour. His lips were pressed tightly together, trembling non-stop, as if he were barely holding back an explosion. The air around them seemed to grow tense and heavy. The assistant didn't dare make a sound, terrified that one wrong word would set him off. So it turned out, Laura's so-called charitable work over the years had been nothing but a sham. She had colluded with the new head of the orphanage behind the scenes, exploiting the names of those pitiful orphans to rake in enormous profits. Once they were no longer useful, they were simply tossed back into the orphanage, completely ignored, dead or alive. The blanket allergy back then was fake. The accident at the charity auction was also orchestrated by her. At the lakeside, she personally pushed Juliet into the water, then turned around and accused Juliet of falling in herself. Even those villagers in the mountain area who beat Juliet, Laura hired them too. Laura had done so many cruel things to Juliet behind his back, and he had known nothing about it. Back to the Rodriguez house, Oliver clenched the files in his hand, his entire body trembling with rage. After getting out of the car, his steps were unbearably heavy. Every step carried an uncontrollable surge of fury, as if what he was stepping on wasn't the floor, but the fire burning in his heart. Oliver, you're back? Did you finish dealing with the company matters so quickly? Seeing him, Laura immediately hurried over, her neck and ears adorned with the jewelry Oliver had once given to Juliet. Smack! Oliver yanked the necklace off her neck and slapped her hard across the face. Laura, how dare you lie to me for so long? The force sent her crashing to the ground. Her right cheek instantly swelled red. Clutching her face, a surge of sheer terror rose in her eyes. Oliver, you know everything now? Chapter 22. I can explain. The money you gave me. I really didn't use it for charity, but... Shut up. Oliver clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. His chest heaved violently, as if his reason were about to be swallowed whole by rage. That's not all. What exactly did you do to Juliet? Laura froze. All the color drained from her face in an instant. Seeing her like this only fueled Oliver's fury. He raised his hand slightly. Take her away. Send her to the mountain area and keep her under watch. And fill the house with everything she's allergic to. The moment the words fell, Laura shook her head frantically. No, Oliver. You can't do this to me. Tears streamed down her face. This time, however, Oliver's expression remained icy, without the slightest hint of mercy. A few days later, after a long and grueling journey, Laura was so starved she had lost all strength. Filthy from head to toe, she lay in the back of the truck, her throat so hoarse she couldn't utter a single word. When the truck stopped, she was thrown into a pitch-black, dilapidated shack like a broken rag doll. The room was filled with dust and clutter. In the next second, piles of moldy items were dumped inside as well. The stench spread instantly, mold spores filling the air. Laura had been allergic to mold since childhood. The moment she inhaled the smell, she jerked upright in agony, clutching her neck, her face flushed red, her features twisting grotesquely. No, help. Someone save me. I was wrong, Oliver. I was wrong. Standing outside the window, Oliver watched coldly as she struggled in pain, then gradually lost consciousness. 3 days later, Laura finally woke up. When she opened her eyes again, she realized she was no longer in that shack. Joy surged through her heart. She thought Oliver had finally decided to spare her. She never imagined that this was only the beginning of the nightmare. A bucket of icy water was suddenly dumped over her head, making her shiver uncontrollably. Before she could even react, she was thrown straight into a frozen reservoir. Freezing water mixed with shards of ice seeped into her clothes, stabbing into her skin like countless needles, leaving behind nothing but searing pain. Laura opened her mouth in agony, trying to cry out for help, but no sound came. Oliver, you won't die well. She stared fixedly at Oliver on the shore. In the depths of utter despair, her consciousness slowly faded away. The next day, Oliver exposed all the evidence of Laura's collusion with the new head of the orphanage. Every crime they had committed was dragged into the light, laid bare for the public to judge. Overnight, Laura fell from a so-called angel of charity to a despised pariah. Shunned by all the houses and cars under her name were dug up and smashed to pieces. The remaining charitable funds were completely recovered. The orphanage director was thoroughly investigated, dismissed from office, and ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment. Those innocent children were finally rescued, receiving help and donations from countless kind-hearted people. At last, everything seemed to settle into place. Everyone, except Oliver. After doing all this, he felt no sense of relief. Instead, The weight in his heart only grew heavier. He suddenly realized the most hateful person was not Laura, nor anyone else. It was himself. But he had already exhausted every possible way. And yet, he still couldn't lessen the pain in his heart. Not even a little. Oliver sat alone beneath the streetlights at dusk. His shadow stretched long behind him as he stared blankly into the distance. A faint, bitter smile tugging at the corner of his lips. From this day forward, his world was left with nothing but himself, and the boundless night. Chapter 23. The morning dew had yet to fade. Mario was already busy working in the garden. Sunlight filtered through the gaps between the leaves, falling on his focused face, making him seem as if he were one with nature itself. Look, your rose bush is growing better and better. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and jogged over to Fiona, looking rather proud of himself. Fiona smiled gently and took out a piece of soft, sweet pastry from the basket. Thanks so much for everything lately, Officer Sue. She teased lightly. I didn't expect you to be so versatile. Even this is something you can do. I just made these pastries this morning. Try one. Mario instinctively lowered his head and took a bite from her hand. Warmth brushed against her fingertips, and Fiona froze on the spot. For a moment, their eyes met, and both saw something different, something unspoken, in each other's gaze. Mario smiled softly, and Fiona's heart was suddenly filled with a warm current. Even her breathing became careful, as if she were afraid to disturb this fleeting tenderness. Fiona, actually, I like you. He stared straight into her eyes, conveying his most sincere feelings. Fiona snapped back to her senses, startled by his words. She quickly pulled her hand back and turned away. I still have things to do at the shop. I'll head back first. She stumbled through the sentence, then vanished like a startled rabbit. That night, after closing the shop, Fiona dragged her exhausted body home. Yet the scene from the morning kept replaying in her mind. All day long, she had tried to drown out those strange feelings and thoughts with non-stop work, but it hadn't helped at all. She locked the shop door and turned around, only to be startled by a figure suddenly appearing in front of her. Mario, do you always walk without making any sound? She took several steps back, clutching her chest as she tried to calm her breathing. For once, Mario didn't retort. He said nothing, only stepped closer, one step at a time. Then he tilted his head slightly, his eyes curving into a smile. In the next second, a bouquet of fragrant white roses appeared before Fiona. Fiona, I spent the entire day today just to find a white rose like this. Her cheeks instantly flushed red. She lowered her head and spoke in a tiny voice. Mario, what you said this morning, I'll pretend I never heard it. You're a marine monitoring officer. You'll need to travel to other seas for work in the future. And I just want to stay here and live a steady life. She thought that after hearing this, Mario would back off. But instead, he looked at her seriously. It's okay. I'm willing to stay, for you. Mario set the flowers aside and gently took her hands, as if holding the most precious treasure in the world. Being a marine monitoring officer is just a job, not my lifelong dream. Compared to it, you matter more to me. Looking into his deep, dark eyes, Fiona suddenly froze. Back when she was with the Rodriguez family, everything, big or small, had always been decided by Oliver. Even earlier, at the orphanage, it had been the same. She had never had the freedom to choose. She could only keep accommodating others. Even when Oliver came looking for her, the sentence he repeated most was always, "Come back with me." No one had ever said, "I'll stay for you." But now, it seemed she had finally met that person. Tears instantly blurred her vision. Fiona lifted her head with a radiant smile and, without hesitation, threw herself into Mario's arms. Me too. The next instant, the pitch-black sky was torn open by a silver streak. In a flash, dazzling fireworks bloomed across the heavens, painting the night with brilliant colors. The two of them held each other tightly, their eyes reflecting nothing but the fierce, unmistakable love they felt for one another.